In the green room, we have, as I said, Marq English. So I'd like to share with you some of Marq English's bio here. So I came across Mark potentially around 2006, 2007.
About that.
That's right. That's when I first became aware of you. And I think since that time, we've been in contact sporadically over that time, and that's been wonderful to share many conversations with you. Mark has been involved with broadcast television across the UK, including a number of comedies, including Shelf Life, What Happened to Mark Fielding from 2006. In 2007, he directed his first feature film called Return to Ravenswood. And in 2011, he saw the completion of a Doctor Who documentary called Fans. He's been freelancing and working on a number of projects. And he has appeared in various movies since that point, Incidental Weekend and the vampire movie Blood and Roses. And he's part of a comedy team, and he's done some work with BBC Worldwide. Him, along with his team, Spiral Paranormal, have produced a number of episodes of video diaries that are available to free download on the Spiral website. And they've also been broadcast on the Unexplained channel on Sky TV. He's filmed projects with Kieran O'Keefe and Steve Parsons of Parascience, familiar characters here to the ASSAP webinars, Richard Felix, and has worked with Compass Paranormal and Fright Nights, as have I. And he writes a regular column for Ghost Voices magazine and has been featured in Paranormal magazine and White Noise Radio. Now that brings back some memories.
White Noise.
That was perhaps one of the first kind of podcasts that actually appeared to tackle the paranormal from a very logical standpoint.
I think so. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It really. I'm aware that Jason stepped away from the paranormal entirely.
Yes. Yeah. Very sad.
Yeah, he stepped away entirely. So his first book, Mark's first book, was called Paranormal Surrey, and that was published by Amberley Books back in 2011. So there's a lot of things that ended 2011. What have you been up to since around that time, my friend?
Thank you. I mean, all those credits are sort of way back when. I'm primarily a YouTuber now. I've had a YouTube channel going for about 7 years, although I've been on YouTube since the beginning. But I do a YouTube video channel about history, heritage, folklore, and I've just launched a new YouTube channel called Conscious Realms, which is about what we're here for tonight: paranormal, ghosts, paranormal investigations, nature of reality, consciousness, all that kind of thing, which I'm putting a bit more focus on at the moment. So that's been my primary goal for the last few years.
No, that's excellent. That's excellent. So, Mark, I know you could talk for England. I've certainly seen you on stage at Seriously Strange and a number of other events. But your talk today that you wanted to share with us, which has been at the core of some of the questions that you've been asking, is ghost hunting worth it? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to mute myself. Mm-hmm. I'm going to allow you to take to the stage, my good friend, and allow you to ramble as much as you want, within reason, of course. And and then we'll bounce back to Caroline, have a quick chat with you afterwards, discuss some of the points you've made, and then we'll open it up to the people who are here gathered today.
Welcome, everybody. Hello there. I've been doing paranormal research for about 30 years. I started off actually with crop circles and things like that in Wiltshire, which I'm still quite interested in, and the mystical things that happened around the Avebury landscape. From that, it sort of grew into sort of very, very interested in ghosts, spirits, and that kind of thing. I used to have an old team called Spiral Paranormal, which I still see everyone from that, but we don't actually actively go out and do ghost hunts anymore. Even that term ghost hunt is something I a little bit squirm at, even back in the day when we were sort of at the height of what we were doing. I have seen the reason I hope the title doesn't sound facetious at all, calling it ghost hunting, is it a waste of time? Because we've had some incredible nights, really enjoyable nights doing paranormal research in these places. Now, I've been saying, if anyone who saw my ASSAP talk back in 2022 in September, I don't know if I'm alone. This is just personal opinions. I personally don't think anywhere is haunted. And what I mean by that is, and I say it's all the time, I do tours of the theatre that I work in, which is a 115-year-old beautiful theatre in South Wimbledon. And I even say it to the audience when I'm doing it then. I don't think anywhere is haunted. I don't think an old Tudor mansion should be any more active with spirit than your local Sainsbury's across the road. I just think you could go into your local supermarket at an appropriate time with all your equipment and still hopefully pick up the same stuff you would in an old house. Everyone's got an opinion on that. I know a lot of what I call raw psychics, which is a term I coined about 15 years ago, which are people who are just picking up stuff. They're not trained professional mediums. And they just pick up stuff just walking down the street, involuntary at times. And they can be in all sorts of places. I don't think you really need to open up to do that kind of thing. And I think everyone's personal experience is what's important. I've still not come across, please, everyone has got their own opinions on this, and please correct me if you think I'm wrong here. I don't think there's any paranormal equipment that can detect ghosts. I think it really comes from within, and it's your own experience and your own consciousness. And also, what is a ghost? I know Richard Felix used to say that quite a lot. What is a ghost? Are you looking for a ghost or are you looking for a spirit? I think a ghost is something, just a recording. Still be amazing to see. I've never seen one, I have to say. But spirit is something you can actually communicate with through a very good psychic or very good medium, which we have occasionally done back in the day. But the reason I say I look at ghost hunting from when we were doing it in the heyday, sort of, let's call it the most haunted years. I know it's a bit of a controversial subject calling it that, but when it was at the height of its popularity. But now with YouTube, I see a lot of. I've just remastered a few of our old episodes, video episodes. I'm a filmmaker as well, and I've just remastered one from the ancient Ram Inn in Gloucestershire. And although people were getting possessed left, right, and centre, not from our team, I have to say, it was a different team. I now look at the YouTube videos also from the ancient Ram Inn from literally the last 6 months, and it's all about demons, possessions, all this evil entities, blah, 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 blah. But I don't think the ancient Ram Inn, for example, is a particularly active area any more than, as I say, going across the road into your local Sainsbury's. I think it's absolutely everywhere. Vibration, energy, frequency, it's everywhere, as Nikola Tesla would say. So when people go out on their Saturday night, as I said, I think it's great fun with good friends, people you trust. You can have a really, really good evening. But the chances, I've never been on a paranormal investigation really when I've had evidence that I could really make me shocked. Probably once or twice where I've really questioned something, but not very often. I'm actually more interested in what the psychics come out with. I'm very much interested in psychic ability. So I'm much more interested in what the psychics will come out with and can we verify some of that information, which we have on past investigations. But actually going out and looking for, actually seeing a ghost is very, very, I'm sure everyone here will hopefully agree with me, it's very, very rare. Much as I'd love to see it, of course. But even now I see it's more the YouTube videos today, as opposed to when we were all doing it back in the day, I'm sure people still are doing it, it's more about being frightened and being scared and scaring the audience and getting a lot of clickbait and thousands of views, which they do. But is it paranormal investigations? I don't think so. I think it's just a scaremongering. If you want to be scared, you're not really being a paranormal investigation, because that's completely not what it's all about. If I saw a ghost, of course I would totally freak out because I'm a human being. Of course I would. But I think people do it more for clickbait now than they do for anything else. I don't watch paranormal TV shows. I haven't watched any for years because it's TV. But I think the clickbait is pretty the prominent reason people go out and do ghost hunting. Which I think invalidates it a lot, unless you want a lot of views on your YouTube channel or on some of these TV shows. I don't actually use the word haunted. I haven't used the word haunted pretty much for 10 years. I personally think it's a bit of a silly word. I don't think, as I say, I think everywhere is active, and I personally like to acknowledge that. I work in an active venue, an old theatre, 115-year-old theatre in South London. I've never had a paranormal experience there, but we've had a lot of stuff, for example, just in the last 2 months of people seeing apparitions in the same spot, which was also picked up by a raw psychic only 10 years ago. So what is going on there? When you get validated reports of the same thing at the same time and multiple witnesses, that's when it gets really interesting, I think. But as I say, I just like to take the clickbait out of it and get back to some serious paranormal research. You know, cameras are very good to use, but I still have never seen anything on camera that even convinces me personally, I can only talk personally, that it's a ghost. It's always very blurry. Here we are in the age of 8K video. I shot a film a couple of years ago as an actor, and I was shooting in 8K, but we still have blurry visions and footage of, especially of UAPs and things like that, which is another interesting subject. I've had two experiences from. But even UAPs, it's still sometimes a little bit grainy when we're in the world of 4K. Even on your phone, you can shoot on 4K. Well, not my phone because it's about 100 years old. But yeah, that's my theory. I'd like to see more serious research going on without the scaremongering that goes with it, you know.
No, you make a really valid point there about how can you do ghost busting, ghost hunting, whatever you wish to call it, spirit seeking, without the gadgets. When it comes to, say, ghost hunting, are predominantly, due to the algorithm, want to push, shock clickbait titles, because, of course, it's about engagement and again making instant clicks, instant reactions. So you mentioned there that you want to get away from that. So what would you want to see be the outlet for a kind of content that is being produced that, is a bit more grounded, a bit more introspective, a bit more investigative? If that's the right word. What would you want to see?
Christian, I think that's a very good point, because I'd love to say, I've said for years, why are we doing paranormal investigations in the middle of the night? Why not do them at 10 o'clock in the morning? It should make absolutely no difference to what apparitions evidence you're going to get. Half the time, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'm falling half asleep, I'm talking about back in the day, and I've been in some great locations, absolutely wonderful locations that are really interesting and historic. I love history. I think a lot of paranormal investigation do like history, but I've still not come, I'm sure some people will point out their reasoning. I still haven't found any reason why we do it in the dark. Really haven't. There's absolutely most sightings and apparition sightings are in broad daylight. And if we can capture that, it will be fantastic. The problem is you're in a sort of, a lot of these ghost hunting groups, as you quite rightly say, it's all about clickbait and algorithms. You can hardly see what's going on anyway. So if you did actually see an apparition or have a communication with something going on, you're probably not likely to see it because it's so dark. Whereas in broad daylight, you are. I mean, I said at the ASSAP conference, my friend Mandy used to be part of our Spiral Paranormal team. Saw two people seeing the same thing twice on the same day in the work. They used to be working in a nursery. And I thought that was fascinating because it was like 9 o'clock in the morning and then again at midday when they were letting the kids out into the playground. Her and a colleague both saw this chap walk through a wall in Tudor, in sort of like very much a sort of Georgian outfit. So, and that was in the morning. Why do we have to do it at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning when we're very, very fatigued? I don't know what people think about that and what their experience is.
I think some people believe that it's the witching hour, isn't it? Those kind of connotations come into it. It's the middle of the night. It's when you get scared. It's when you see the figure at the side of the bed. It's when you go to the toilet and you might see, in my case, at the end of my corridor here, you can probably see just off camera, at the very end of that corridor, I've got it's a 6 foot tall, it's like a standing, not an ironing board. It's like a dry cleaning device, but it's silhouetted against the stairs window. So when I walk out the store every night, I see a praying mantis in my head because it looks just like it. It scares the living for Jesus out of me.
Yeah.
No, I know it's there. It gets me every time. It's amazing, but it gets me every time. And I think they are the experiences we want to feel. We want to feel that heart jump. We want to say, we want to be scared. And I think that also feeds into our adventure side. And I think the paranormal with adventure and the weirdness and what we want to get out of it, I think they feed into each other. We want to get out of that. Trouser press. Thank you. Thanks, Mark Wallace. That's right.
I think there is a lot of evidence saying, 3 o'clock in the morning is, or whatever, witching hour, or later on, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, apparently your senses are very much heightened. But that's actually to do if you've been fast asleep, not if you've been wide awake since 9 o'clock, on the investigation. But yes, don't get me wrong, you do want a bit of that little bit of adventure with it. Of course you do. You want to experience something, but for the sake of scaremongering and cheap fears is a word I'm going to use, a phrase I'm going to use. Cheap fears. Is it really worth it? Not like people at ASSAP because they take the paranormal seriously, which I think wish there was more groups like that. But yeah, I still think you get the same results at 10 o'clock in the morning as you would at 10 o'clock at night. That's just an opinion.
So jumping in, I think some people probably would go of an evening because there's less noise from traffic, maybe, so you can get clearer captures on some of the investigating that you're doing. And also, most of these venues, they double up, don't they? And they have a daytime job as well as a nighttime. So could it be that, we're tied for the times that we would go because of opening hours? Maybe if it's a museum or a stately mansion, something like that, that would have another job. So you are limited to getting there maybe after 6 o'clock at night. But
I think that's a very good point. That's a very good point. But if I don't mind, that's more logistics, though, isn't it, as opposed to senses? I've been in venues that are far away from any roads, and we're still there during the day, and it was fine. But as you say, access is the big problem, isn't it? When we're very fortunate to go into locations that are after hours, which is great. But if you do it in the summer when it doesn't get dark till about 10 o'clock, it should still be getting the same results, no matter what time of day it is. But as I say, I still think you could go into your local Sainsbury's. Bear with me here. I sound like a bit of a fantasy. But you can go into your local Sainsbury's and do an investigation and still bear the same results if you're lucky. That's just an opinion I've been saying for years. But yeah, it's all about access to these venues, But you don't have to go into an old historic house. Much as we all like history, I don't think, to find some paranormal paranormal evidence.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, at 3 o'clock in the morning as well, if you've had a normal sleeping pattern for the rest of the week, your normal sleeping pattern at 3 o'clock, you're going to start hallucinating.
Yeah.
I can remember swapping from daytimes to night times in the police when I was a cop, and I used to hallucinate and see people jumping out of hedges at 3 when I was driving the car. And it's just like, oh my God, who's coming out of the hedge there now? You do at 3 o'clock have parts of that still when you're sat quiet and you're listening and there's no stimulation. So I totally agree. I've recently had the last 4 weeks have been incredibly busy with investigations for private clients and for people who want me to write magazine articles. And we've had one that's cancelled this week due to a family circumstance. But we've rescheduled it to be the daytime on a Monday because they're closed. And I said, well, there's no reason why we can't. But I think we're going at lunchtime and we're going to go through to 8 o'clock at night. So we'll get a bit of daytime noise from the road and we'll get some quiet when it's calmed down. But like everybody else, I think that you can, if you're lucky, you can experience, ghosts, spirits or anything like that in the daytime equally at night. Now, something I did pick up on you, where you said that there's a lot of things that's happening in the daytime that people were seeing a Tudor chap. Do you think that this is more on the ghost spectrum, where this was what they did on their daily basis, where they were doing the same walk and they were active and that was their daily routine?
That's a very good question, Caroline. I would say, again, this is all just circumstantial in my own opinion. Yeah, probably just a replay of what they were doing during their lifetime. It could be a time slip, of course, which we discussed on my new channel with me and my friend Wendy. But yeah, I always say, I think Richard Felix says this quite a lot. It's just a recording of past events that somehow we very lucky people or unlucky people, depending on how you look at it, actually witness. So all the years I've been doing paranormal research, I've never ever seen a ghost. I think I've had a little bit of communication with spirit with various people, but I've never seen a ghost as so. But I say, yeah, I think you're right. I think it's just a replay of a past event or maybe even a future event. I'm always wondered why people just with the scare factor, it's with a Victorian lady or a Tudor man, but you never hear or very rarely a Neolithic spirit or ghost. I have theories on that too. That's just my theories, that a ghost of that far back, like the trails off an aeroplane, a sort of dissipate after a while. Maybe that energy dissipates after a long time. You never see ghosts of dinosaurs. You very rarely see ghosts of animals. I know people do. But why don't we see, for example, here's something. The theatre I work in, I've worked there longer than the chap who founded it. He worked there. I've been there 20 years, and he was there 15 years until his death. But people say they've seen him there. Well, I've been there much longer. Would my spirit be more likely to be seen after I'm gone than him who founded it? It's all a matter of what people want to perceive. Because he's an Edwardian gentleman, it just makes it a much more romanticised view. Mm-hmm. Whereas I've been in historic houses. A great example would be the classic Bulbrook Castle near Pooh Country, near the Pooh Country in East Sussex, which unfortunately I think has been converted into flats now. A wonderful property, one of Henry VIII's hunting lodges. And when we had my friend Alan, who's unfortunately not with us anymore, much again a raw psychic, and he wasn't picking up on Anne Boleyn and all this kind of stuff everyone else seemed to pick up on, and Henry VIII, who was probably never even ever visited there. But he was picking up on a guy very strongly who renovated it in the 1920s, which no one has ever come. And we did a bit of research, we found his name, and it was the same chap. So I find that interesting. It doesn't have to, because it's a historic property, why can't it be someone from much more recent times? I mentioned when I went to Eynsford Castle in Kent a couple of years ago during the lockdown, we just opened up again. And I thought to myself, why doesn't this place have maybe the ghost of a guy who walked his dog for 15 years there? You know, it's all open access and open grounds, as opposed to somebody from back in sort of medieval times. So, yeah, I don't know how you feel about that. I don't think just because it's a historic property, we shouldn't just be seeing people from that particular time. It should be from any time, really. If their presence is there and they've done an imprint on that area, you know.
So can I ask?
Yeah, totally agree with you. Sorry, Christian, you carry on, my lovely.
Sorry, yeah. Not at all, not at all. So actually, I was going to ask you a question regarding your acting backgrounds. I know that's something that's deeply embedded with you as a person. So have you heard of like John Sabal and his who does his performance excavations, also known as the Philadelphia? Is that correct? Is that
Singapore experiment?
Singapore experiment, Philadelphia experiment. So I see what I've been looking at. So the idea is that if you were to dress up as a character from a particular era, the entities or the spirits that are supposed to be in that area would more likely interact with you on a spiritual or a mediumistic or a ghostly nature, because they would identify you as someone who's from that same era if you are putting on a performance as someone dressed up. Have you ever considered doing anything like that yourself?
No, but I think it's a really good idea. And I know in the past I've been in investigations where maybe the property had some dress-up clothes and people did do that. So I think there could be a lot of interesting results, something like that. It's something I've never thought of myself, but it's like attract like, isn't it? Law of attraction. So you've got somebody who's dressed in Tudor gear, is that going to attract a ghost, which is also from the Tudor period, for example? So I don't know much about it, but that does sound quite interesting. Can
you tell us a little bit more about your theatre? I'm intrigued.
My theatre, I'll tell you now, I work at Wimbledon Theatre. I've worked in theatre backstage since the mid-90s, but I've worked at Wimbledon Theatre this is my 21st year. I'm the longest serving member of staff. And I'm the stage door manager, and it's really beautiful theatre. It's built in 1910 on the site of an old Victorian mansion, and I do the ghost walks there every couple of times a year. Also do the history tours, and sometimes we go up on stage and do seances at the end of the night, or I don't call them seances, I call them communication circles, which is great fun. And a couple of people who come out, because obviously we advertise to the public when I do these events. And people have come along who are secretly psychic, which is really interesting. And when they pick up on the same stuff that my mediums I've brought in pick up on, I get really sort of a little tingle down my spine. Go, oh, okay, that's very interesting. It's a beautiful theatre. It's 115 years old along the Broadway in Wimbledon. I don't know if anyone is near Wimbledon. been there today, hence ATG. But yeah, it's a lovely theatre. The problem is I work backstage, and the backstage area is all from 1990, so it's all a bit modern, But I'm just used to it. But yeah, it's a very, very beautiful theatre. And Lauren Hardy played there once in the 1950s. I'm a big Lauren Hardy fan, so I thought that was quite interesting. But yeah, it's a lovely theatre.
So is it still working? Is it still hosting shows?
God, yeah. Oh yeah. We have got a show in this week. Yeah, we're a touring venue, so we have shows coming in each week. We obviously have a panto every year. We had Ian McKellen last year doing some Shakespeare. We're primarily for musicals and tours of musicals, which is not my favourite. But yeah, it's a lovely. Yeah, so very much a working theatre. We're owned by ATG Entertainment, which is the biggest theatre company in the world. They took it over in 2004 when I joined. Yes, I've been there 21 years now. Yeah.
Fabulous. That's great. So you haven't yet hosted the show Ghost Stories.
Ghost Stories, what's that?
It's they're actually going around and doing traveling at the moment to it's based on a TV show that was on last year, I think it was, or a couple of years ago. But it's been out in the theatres in London. I know.
Sorry, yes, I know, yeah.
20 years, I think. But I'm just wondering, have you hosted it? Because there is alleged some activity that tends to follow the shows from theatre to theatre.
I haven't. I've had friends work on it. Sorry, I misunderstood the premise of what you've said. Yeah, Ghost Stories, yeah, we haven't had that, no. It's been in our venues in the West End, but we've not received it. That would be very interesting, though. Very interesting. Interesting, something following it around. Could be. We've had Most Haunted film do some live events there a couple of years ago, which I wasn't working deliberately. But no, we've not had that. I'd love to have Ghost Stories there. That would be fantastic.
Yeah, I've just been to see it recently in Bath, and it was pretty good. I think they've updated some of the scenes that they originally had done. So yes, it's very entertaining and more on point of being more modern now. So.
Yeah. And I think, I'd say it's perfect for a theatre show, because theatres are perfect places for this kind of thing, creating that whole atmosphere as well. And hopefully people who come to see it also are very like-minded to watch that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'd love to get that in. That would be fantastic.
It was a couple of years ago I got to see The Woman in Black on...
Oh, I thought years ago. Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
I was Nottingham. We got I think there's 4 theatres here. Obviously got Theatre Royal, and it has that kind of wraparound atmosphere in there. And to see that on stage was it really was quite haunting afterwards. And I got to do the review for the local newspaper. And I was speaking to the people who coordinate the media and stuff afterwards, and I joined at the press circle. And they were like, you've got to stay around afterwards, because the whole place, when everyone leaves, is so eerie here. So the team, myself and the media team, we stayed in the venue afterwards, and you really could feel that kind of palpable change in the atmosphere, even though this effectively was a production. But everyone's heightened fear and suspicion, that kind of wonder that they had in watching the show, permeates in the building afterwards. I mean, do you find that yourself?
I mean, what's interesting about theatres and anywhere that's a sort of a public venue, it maybe also follows on what Caroline was saying about this. So maybe something's following this show around. But for example, we got a sold-out show this week, pretty much, and it's 1,600 bodies in one place for a couple of hours. So is that concentrated energy? And obviously our energy goes far beyond our bodies. I'm going into consciousness now. And does that stay and linger where you are? So yeah, I'm totally open to that. I'm a person who meditates, does breath work, all that kind of thing. So I like to get into altered states of consciousness. And we do know that our electromagnetic field goes well beyond our physical bodies. That's been proved.
So here's a question. You said something there I'm really quite intrigued about. You said that you do meditation, you go through a process where you're having out-of-body experiences. I mean, some people would say if you're using medicinal herbs to assist in that, whether you're using cannabis or whether you're using DMT to reach those kinds of experiences, do you think more people should have those experiences or attempt to have them?
I mean, I'd never tell anyone else what they should do. I mean, I do the Wim Hof method. You know who Wim Hof is, the Iceman. I do the cold showers only in the summer. but I do the Wim Hof method, and that's, I mean, as he says, get high on your own supply, which is pranayamic breathing and all that kind of thing. It's really quite intense. It's can't, it's not something you just casually do. You got to be in the right frame of mind. I wouldn't get in a car and drive straight after doing it, but that can be quite sort of whoa. I'd like to try, and I don't. Also for paranormal research, I'd love to try ayahuasca and get a DMT trip, but that will be under controlled circumstances. Ideally, going out to the Amazon if I could afford it. I'd love to see the altered state of reality that produces. The incredible stories I hear about that, a natural herb medicine. Out of the thousands and thousands of plants in the Amazon, how did those two individual plants come together? The ancients and the elders say they were guided to these two particular plants to bring together, and to go one on each other on their own, they won't produce anything. We all got DMT in our bodies. It's in the gut, but we've got an enzyme in our gut which presents it actually working. So with ayahuasca, you can actually brew it. That's like it tastes horrible apparently, and you do vomit. But once you've taken it, you can have about a 20-minute journey. Don't like calling it a trip. It's not really a trip. It's a journey beyond your consciousness into whatever's going on around you. So it's absolutely fascinating. And of course, like most places, it's Class A drug. It's not a drug at all. It's a plant medicine.
Yeah, I think the reason why it's still illegal is because in order to have a drug, you've got to be able to copyright it effectively. You've got to be able to sell it. And because it's a natural product, they can't do that, and thus it has that kind of, not a stigma, but it just has that law that says basically, we can't sell this, we can't replicate it, thus it's illegal because we can't manufacture it ourselves.
I think it's also important, especially to go out to some of these retreats in the Peruvian jungle in South America. I think it's important to have a guide or a shaman with you to do it. I'm not religious whatsoever, but I think it's good to have that kind of spiritual guide. I'm very spiritual, completely different thing. But I think you need that guide with you to go through the journey in case there's any problem. Some people have done it on their own or with people in other countries, and I think that's a mistake. And they had real bad trips, and there's no one there to bring them down. So I think you have to do it safely. It won't kill you. Don't do that, but you still need to do it safely.
Yeah, I can imagine effectively having a kind of otherworldly experience like that, even if it's essentially just psychedelic. If you are not comfortable with people around you because you don't know who they are, one of the kind of humane fears that we have is, what am I making myself vulnerable to? And thus that will feed into your experience, and thus, like you said, have a bad trip, as it were. Well, can I ask you something regarding the topic of ghost hunting, the paranormal, which we all have a passion for? Do you think ghost hunting as such offers something quite unique to people, like a sense of understanding, connection that people have that other hobbies don't?
Oh, Chris, that's a really lovely question. Yes, I think it does. It's interesting when you're out talking to someone. If someone mentions football to me, over my head, I've got zero interest in football. But as soon as you're talking about the paranormal, it opens up a dialogue with whoever you're talking to. I think you're absolutely right. I think it does. I think it is quite unique hobby or interest or profession or vocation that opens up. And I find most time, nearly 9 times out of 10, you talk about the paranormal, it goes into a conversation. I've never really had someone say, that's all rubbish, isn't it? I don't think I've ever had that. People are quite happy to engage in it and have a conversation, and usually run out of time. Back to the theatre I work in, I've had a few quite famous actors sort of comment on things that they found in the theatre. So yes, I think that's absolutely right. I think it is sort of generates that kind of conversation, that sort of kindred spirit.
Because one of the topics, of course, still viral. Oh, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Caroline. No,
don't worry. I was just going to say, Mark, do you think that you've got what they would call the cocktail party syndrome, where you hear someone saying, "Oh, UAP" or a ghost, and you automatically turn towards them and go on, and you're listening to someone's conversation? Do you have that? I know I do.
I think I do, yes. That's very, very interesting, Caroline, because someone quite famous was talking about that very, very recently. James Doty, who's a very parapsychologist and doctor who promotes the law of attraction, but from a scientific point of view. And he says exactly the same thing. He said, you could be in a crowded room. You might hear someone just say your name, and there's loads of conversations going on, but you hear ghosts. You're like, what? or anything. Yeah. So yeah, it does happen. Yeah, I have had that quite a few times. Yeah.
I sit and I think, oh, it could be somewhere else to investigate for the team, or oh, another weirdo just like us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, I think it does happen quite a lot. Our ears seem to tune into what our vibration is, and what we're interested in.
yeah, definitely. Sorry, Christian, what were you saying 2 seconds ago?
Oh, I've got a million questions, amazing different directions. But no, so I mean,
Great conversation, this.
I know it's wonderful actually. I'm great to share it with everyone. So, why do you think ghost hunting helps people process fear, grief, and the unknown, making it a pursuit?
Well, grief, I think most will agree, is something beyond this physical realm. I think there is. I'm very interested in consciousness more than anything else. That is conscious. There's now a lot of changes especially in quantum physics. It's getting more scientists are coming on board to the way we already think, which is consciousness might be, and this is a mind blower, might be fundamental to the universe. Not in the way that we think consciousness is, but there is a underlying field of reality that we can't see, but we are conscious of. So yeah, people want to know that there is something beyond the physical realm, especially when you've lost loved ones. We've all had that issue. Me very recently with a mother. So yeah, you want to know what else is going on. And as you said, and what Caroline's saying, there's a nice kindred spirit as well. There are a few people who take a little bit, going to be a bit crazy. I've met some quite interesting people over the years, especially people who get possessed. That's the classic. I'm not saying people can't get possessed, but I think myself, were you getting possessed in this old Victorian house? Will you get possessed in your local Sainsbury's? And they always get possessed in English, which always helps. But yeah, I think generally I've made some great friends over the years through paranormal investigations, and I'm sure you guys have as well. Like you people. But yeah, I think it does bring people together because they want to know a little bit more that's going on beyond our three-dimensional universe.
Yeah, because I think there is something quite fundamental about processing grief, fear, curiosity of the unknown. I still think kind of fits around the same kind of thread, particularly when we're talking about ghosts, when we're talking about maybe questioning our own mortality, when we get into a certain point, we're going, what does the afterlife look like? Will I get there? Those kind of questions where you're asking questions about reality or the nature of, the world and the universe of itself. I think a lot of people who are interested in ghosts perhaps ask them questions of themselves and of the people they know more often than people who generally are just kind of going about, like the football fans, generally the office workers. I mean, ghost hunting or the topics around that allow those philosophical discussions to happen. And I think we're more open to having those conversations because they sit in there. And I've often wondered if ghost topics allow people to process grief a little bit differently.
I think so. I think that's a very good point. Some people, I've seen friends who've lost loved ones and literally within a month they're going to see a medium. Whether that's the right thing to do or not, I don't know so soon. I can be a bit critical about professional mediums versus what I call raw psychics. If you're a professional medium, how can I say this very politely? Because I know a few professional mediums who are very good, but you've got an agenda. Especially if you're charging money, you've got an agenda. You can't go up to them and say, "I'm not getting anything from you, sorry. I'll get my money back." But raw psychics don't do that. But generally, most people are very, very good. So I know quite a few professional mediums who've been doing it 30 years, and who are very good and don't charge the earth either. Would I go to a professional medium? I mean, I've had readings over the years, not recently. But also I think it's very much, it's harder to give a reading now, because especially if you know them, because everything's on Facebook and this, that, and the other. It's so easy to build up a picture of you unless you're going in completely raw. But yeah, it could be a way of processing grief, and that I totally understand. Totally understand.
So, did like personal reflection then, of just like ghost hunting and the kind of the paranormal side? Did that change your view of life as you were kind of investigating it yourself and the topics around it?
Yes. When I first started getting really interested in this in the sort of early 1980s, when I started reading Unexplained magazine and that kind of thing, It wasn't me having a personal experience or anything like that. It was nothing to do with that. It was more to do with the magazines coming out at the time and Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World, right? Wonderful stuff. And then about, as I said earlier at the beginning of the interview, about 1990, 91, I started getting very much interested in the phenomena around Wiltshire, especially with crop circles and that kind of thing, which I still investigate now. I don't think crop circles are aliens or anything like that. I think they're all man-made or human-made, but the story doesn't end there. But especially around the Avebury area, which is my home away from home, the Avebury Stone Circle and the surrounding landscape, really, really powerful paranormal centre, more so than Stonehenge, which I find absolutely empty, devoid of any spiritual connections at all. Maybe it's just the way it's laid out and the tourists and all that kind of thing. But yeah, so I've gone a little bit off topic there. Sorry. But yeah, I do. I think we all want to find those bigger answers, which leads to the other question is, well, we're all going to find out one day. Why do we bother? I always find quite interesting when people say they're looking for spiritual awakenings and all that kind of thing. I think, well, we're all going to find out one day. Why do we bother? We're all going to go back to source energy, as I call it, going back to source energy.
So you mentioned about reactions that people have to ghost hunting previously. Do you think that there's cycles of different reactions from the public that you would get? So back in the day when Most Haunted were on TV, the cycle at the time and the reactions was the fear factor. And it was a lot of screaming and a lot of running around in the dark. You move on and you come along to Zach Bagans and his type of investigating and his results. I find in ASSAP, cases that coming in are reflective of the TV, what's on. And, back when he was popular at his height, you were getting a lot of things about demonic activity, reflecting on what was on TV back then. And now we're moving into a new era where we have Danny Robbins, who's doing his TV program. I think he is a godsend. He is making ghost hunting normal for the normal people and making it more acceptable for people to speak out and to discuss this. Do you agree with this?
Yes, I do. I must admit, this really might surprise a few people. I've not hardly seen any of Danny Robbins' material. I know my old friend Kieran O'Keefe, I did a lot of work with, does stuff with him. But as you quite rightly say, he's making it normal again and making it acceptable. And some of the stories of the clips I have seen are fascinating. And we had him at the 2022 ASSAP conference in the hotel. Yeah. I've re-released that little bit of clip on my new channel. I really like him. I think everyone else does. I think he is a breath of fresh air, as you've just said. And hopefully it's going to take us in a little bit of a new direction. And considering how popular it is at the now with him, I think that's a good thing. And getting away from all the scaremongering that we used to have.
What I found within the group setting of us getting cases coming in and also for ASSAP is that we're getting a lot more normal, well-adjusted, balanced cases coming in. That is, do you know what? This has been going on for a little while and I just need to know what's going on. And it's people who would have said years ago, oh God, I can't ask these questions. They'll think I'm nuts and they'll lock me up. So they are now coming forward and they're saying, well, I've experienced this and I had something similar in my last home. And you're finding that you're getting a lot more buy-in from people who want to learn scientifically how to explore, investigate, and to look more into it.
I agree. I mean, my dream is for a physicist to come up to us and say, do you know what? I think I've seen a ghost. A physicist. And now science, I think, it's all very well to say science this, science that, but science is coming a little bit more on board, especially in quantum physics. Donald Hoffman, for example, so Roger Penrose, who think consciousness is universal, and that could explain quite a lot. But yeah, when you get, as you quite rightly say, when you get rational people coming up to you and talking about it, it does make you go a bit more interested. Okay, what did you experience? Tell me a bit more. And although they might be trying to rationalize it, but it's still fascinating to hear their stories. I'm sure, like most of you all in the chat room, no one ever gets bored of hearing a good ghost story. I think it's very interesting, especially it's really a personal thing as well.
So, if you go back to the Zach Bagans era where he was at his height, people were convinced that orbs were orbs and, demons were demons. And now we've got a different thought pattern from people. They're very well adjusted and they actually gaslight themselves. even if they've seen or heard something and they cannot explain it, multiple sightings of people all witnessing the same thing, and the natural go-to is to gaslight yourself and say, that didn't happen. That can't have happened. There must be a reasonable explanation for it. So we're now having a lot more balanced approach to looking into things rather than everything being paranormal, which I'm loving this current era that we're in at the moment. And Danny Robbins, he has got a lot to thank for where we're headed.
I totally agree. I think it's great. I think there's a little bit of a revolution going on at the moment, something totally different, as you've just said, and I totally agree with you. Especially in the last, I would say 15 years, there's been a real shifting, I'm going to use that word again, sorry, but consciousness, where people are now coming on board to the idea, as I said just now, that consciousness is universal. And that could also spread out into sort of ghosts and paranormal and all that kind of thing. And even 15 years ago, we started mentioning things like consciousness. You'd be like, what? What's that? What are we talking about? But there is a shift. And as you say, Danny Robbins, I think, is a godsend. I said God, I don't do God, but yeah, he's a godsend. And it's really changing the way we look at it. I think, one thing I do, if you want to go, it's up to you if you want to go down this road. I've got another little avenue I'd like to go down, which is still within what we're talking about. But I do think there is a revolution going on, which is really handy. I mean, Ghost Adventures and all that, I never saw an episode. I saw odd clips and it turned off straight away, just not my thing, not my thing. I haven't seen a paranormal show since Most Haunted, probably. I just find that it's TV. It's TV. If there's no fear factor, no scaremongering, it won't get recommissioned. I know how TV works.
Before we go down this other avenue with you, you did say that you had a couple of experiences in the paranormal with ghosts. You haven't seen one, but you've had a couple of experiences that made you question.
We'll return to that conversation in just a moment. But before you have an ask of you, we ask that you hit the like button here, and we ask that you hit the subscribe button. Now, the reason is, for you it is just a moment, but for us, it really helps the algorithm find our content and other people find what really is deeply interesting to them.
Yes, that's pretty much with when I've been working with psychic mediums. I said the raw psychics. We've been in places where so that's what I'm interested. I think I said this before, that if I can get evidence that what they've come out with, and we shield them from information, we don't. One thing we do that Most Haunted used to do with Derek is not tell them where we're going. And if we can get something that's validated, they come out with something, and then we can historically get some data that proves what they were saying, then that makes to me much more legitimate, especially the raw psychics. I thought it's interesting. I've been on paranormal investigations as a guest or helping out or whatever. They might have the professional medium as like their professional guest for the guests of the investigation, and they're coming out with all this stuff, and my raw psychic who's with me going, I'm not saying they didn't get that, but all I'm getting is this, and this, or I'm sorry, I'm not getting anything. I don't know what they're getting, but I'm not getting anything. It just gives it a little bit more authenticity to it, as far as I'm concerned. I think some people do it for the camera, so to speak. Not being unkind to any psychic mediums. That's just my experience over the last 20 years.
Yeah, thank you. Now, take us down this other avenue then, Mark.
Well, I think I'm sure a lot of people have heard the law of attraction and the law of vibration, and I'm very much into that. It's taken me a long while to get my head around it. And I do a mantra. I practice a thing called Ho'oponopono, which is an idea that we are 100% responsible for everything we experience in reality. So if someone cuts you up in traffic, we've been responsible for that. It's a bit of a hard pill to swallow. And I do a mantra in my head where I'm constantly cleaning out all the old data from our ancestors, which does, not only does it get into our DNA, but it also gets to our subconscious mind. It's all about the subconscious mind. So if you can clear out that old data, I do this little mantra in my head. It's an old Hawaiian mantra. They call it a prayer. I don't like the word prayer. I use the word mantra. and it just sort of cleans out that data and makes things suddenly synchronicity. And I have noticed this in my life, and you notice the little synchronicities happening. Oh, okay, that's interesting. I know it doesn't have anything really to do with ghosts and paranormal, but it does in a way, because I think once again our mind is so powerful that we take it a little bit for granted sometimes. We get so wrapped up in our daily lives. We all do it. But even during the day, I'm just got a little mantra going through my head all day long. And the more I do it, it gets into my subconscious mind. I'm clearing out all that old data. So I don't know what people think about that. It's called Ho'oponopono. It was brought to fame in the 1990s by Dr. Hugh Len, who only passed away a couple of years ago. And he, in Hawaiian State Hospital, there were all these violent criminals who were shackled, drugged up, okay, couldn't stand trial because they were so violent. And he was brought in for their quotas. He said, look, I'm not going to see your patients. You're only doing this for your books, but I will look at their records. And basically what he was doing, he was looking at the records of these violent criminals. And this is all fact, by the way. This is not me making things up. And just by his own reaction and his own thoughts, reading people's all their records of murder, rape, horrible things like that, he made himself 100% responsible for how he felt about reading them. So he didn't actually see any of the patients. The facility was closed down within 3 years, and a couple of the criminals were fit enough to stand trial. Some were even released. And there's been incredible stories and eyewitness accounts of how if you take 100% responsibility for your own consciousness on what you perceive, things start to change in your own reality. So it's a bit of a hard pill to swallow, especially when you get cut up in traffic. That wasn't my fault. Well, in a way, you might have manifested that into your reality, and could you use that to manifest your experiences with the paranormal? I think you probably can. So yeah, it's a bit of a full-on one that I wasn't even going to talk about that, but yeah.
I actually know somebody else who takes that on and studies that. And I can remember saying, oh gosh, the world's conspiring against me to stop me from getting my meeting today, kind of thing. And he went, no. So, and used to have a good chat with me. The world is not conspiring against you. Obviously you didn't put things in place to make it happen for yourself to get there quicker. And he used to say the mantras he did were in threes. So he would get out of bed in the morning and he would put his feet on the floor and say, good morning, good morning, good morning.
Lovely.
Yeah. So I have heard of it before. And to be honest, I totally agree. Mindset. If you have a positive mindset, it does change your outcome.
I agree. Yeah. Get over your ego. It's called self-identity. The 4 phrases, I did the 4 phrases in your head. I'm sorry, please forgive me, I love you, thank you. And you're talking to source energy. You're trying to get forgiveness for all your old data, which you might not have manifested. It could be from your ancestors from years ago, well before your time. I'm going a bit of a personal. Yeah, I'm going to go down this road. I had cancer about 4 years ago, very treatable one, thank you. But I'm quite a healthy person. I thought, well, why did I get cancer? It could have been my ancestors, a trauma from my ancestors that caused it now. I wasn't going to go down that road, but I just wanted to bring up as an example. I'm fine now, obviously. But it was like, what caused that? Was it my lifestyle or was it my ancestors? I smoked for a long time. I don't smoke now. Could that have caused it? Or was it a trauma from my ancestors that came through my subconscious mind and my DNA to cause me to have that now? As you quite rightly say, I think it's all about affirmations and how you look at the world. I know people are constantly moaning. I look at them on Facebook and that constantly, every post they do is a negative. And because they're feeding that back into themselves, back into the source, it's all about the law of attraction. You're attracting stuff back to you, so what you put out is what you're going to get back. That's why I think when we used to do paranormal investigations, I always said to them, just be positive. We used to meditate sometimes before we did an investigation, just so we're all in the same mindset, whether we got activity or not. It's just a nice feeling to be into,
It's interesting that you say that in investigations, because the positivity side, we always find, and I don't know if other people here experience the same when they're investigating, is when you're on that little break for 5 minutes and you're just talking randomly amongst yourself about normal life stuff and, who's doing what, that's when activity happens, when you're just chatting amongst yourself. I think, is it because you lighten the mood?
I think so, yeah. I mean, one thing I did say, I should have said right back at the beginning, I'm sure we've all been on investigations where we've been guests or I've been helping out, and you're getting some nice little bit of activity going on. And then suddenly down the radio comes, right, break time. Okay, 15 minutes. Hold on, we're in the middle of something here. No, we're going to move you on to the next room, and it totally spoils the atmosphere. You're getting something really good going and you have to stop it. That's another reason. Sorry, that was a little bit of a moan. But yeah, but I totally agree with you. Yeah, if everyone's in the same mindset, Caroline, you can spread that out and spread it out. Yeah.
Thank you. Christian.
Yeah, I was just going to tap you. You're talking about television shows, right? So, and we're talking about how there's the kind of zeitgeist with television versus what kind of experiences people are reporting. So we spoke there about the Zach Baggins era, the most haunted era, and it's interesting. And due to that, there's an interesting age range that I've not wrote about. I've intended to for quite some time. Of those who grew up watching like Mysterious World, as you mentioned earlier, Arthur C. Clarke. But there was a particular show I really enjoyed called Sightings.
Brilliant. Yeah.
And that was presented as a weekly news show.
Mm-hmm.
And that was actually produced by Henry Winkler, the Fonz.
I worked with him, actually. I worked with Henry Winkler once.
Yeah, so he was in our Panto. An on-screen character. He obviously was just the producer. Obviously, he did Unsolved Mysteries and so on. I think he still does. But it was interesting how that was, you literally saw investigations on a week-to-week basis and new reports that were coming through. And as such, it felt like it was a live news show being reported as a kind of in-studio with interviews, a kind of magazine segments where they clearly were sending out investigators to locations. Yeah. And you were seeing a progression. And in that era that's when X-Files kind of hit. And after that, it kind of went a bit crazy with what kind of experiences are being around. But of that kind of slightly earlier era where Sightings, Mysterious World, most people's experiences were people were willing to get together. They were willing to write magazine articles. I've seen so many kind of Bufora magazines and kind of early ufology magazines and early paranormal magazines. What people were just writing and distributing to each other through like kind of a mailing list circles effectively. They were a lot more grounded, a lot more kind of authentic and genuine in the kind of experiences that people were having. And I said, how we've gone through the television eras of Zach Baggins' Most Haunted, and like you said, now this uncanny era, where there's almost a balance between skeptic and team believer, and people are willing to have the conversation because they don't want to take the position of either one. They kind of want to have a neutral on what is going on here. And I didn't want to veer away earlier, but how do you feel that what the next era of this could be if we allow this to continue? What could come next?
I think, very, very picking up what you said, I think Sightings was probably one of the if not the best paranormal show we've ever had. Amazing. Where will we go next? Picking up what Caroline was saying, I think Danny Robbins is on the right lines. I'd like to see a few more live investigations, but done honestly. It might be boring television. I say television on YouTube. But yeah, we need a bit more, less frills and scares and clickbait and more honest investigations, and trying and slowly get people back into interesting in how paranormal investigations should work, as opposed to just fear-mongering. I got possessed by a demon. Yawn. When especially the ancient Ramin, going back to that again, I saw one recently saying I was possessed by a demon. Well, a demon is more of a Christian term, and it's very much a pagan site around there. Apparently, the house is built on a pagan burial site. But even so, why would that produce a demon? See, I'd like to see a bit more honesty in investigations. I've been saying this for years, but I don't see it very often.
Caroline, do you want to visit the questions of our esteemed colleagues here who have joined us in the back room, who I can see are feverishly posting about how interesting it is to have this discussion and how it's a fabulous webinar. It's really interesting. And actually, in all fairness, it's quite good to mix up the format a bit, and it's actually been really wonderful to share a conversation in this kind of
Well, I'm talking to intelligent people who've got very open minds.
I'm not intelligent.
Well, we'll take that. Be positive. Thank you. Thank you.
Exactly.
Okay, first question goes to Kieran Farrell. He says, if ghosts are stone tape environmental recordings, then they should not be responsible for intelligent hauntings. As I think that should be recording, cannot respond to direct questions accurately. So presumably that would be spirit. And if so, what do you consider a spirit to be, please?
Oh God, that's a very, very good question. What I've been saying for years, I don't think, a recording. I mean, I know people go to the stone tape theory, but I don't personally support that because I think you can still see an apparition out on a battlefield or something like that. A spirit is something I personally think is just something a good psychic medium, or if just someone who's very open-minded can communicate with her. It's something that is beyond our senses in the quantum realm, wherever we're going to be going after. Yeah, I've said for quite a long time there is a distinct, and thank you, Kieran, for bringing that up. There's a distinct difference between a ghost and a spirit. A ghost is pretty much a recording, still amazing to see if you're very lucky. And a spirit is something you can actually communicate with if you're very, very, very lucky. So yeah, I think we need to. I've always said we need to differentiate the two meanings, because everyone just sums it all up as a ghost when it can mean other things. So yeah, that's my.
So feeding in from what Kieran had said, I mean, if we go
Very
back
good question,
to
Kieran.
the timings of when we do ghost hunts and paranormal investigations, I would guess if it's a recording and you're on this alleged stone tape theory that's replaying itself of Mrs. Miggins in the pie shop who makes pies every day, and then you see her stood in the kitchen in the daytime. Do you think then we're going to be more likely in daytime to be seeing a recording of people going about their daily business?
Yeah, I think you said that before. I do think that it's just like a recording of their daily business. I say I'm not a big fan of the stone tape theory. Sorry, Richard Felix. I'm not a big fan of that because, say you have a car, petrol alone is not going to make that car go. You need four wheels, you need a driver, you need other elements to make it work. But yeah, I do like the idea that they're sort of just going around, just doing their daily business they used to do back in the day, and if you're very lucky, you can actually witness that. And also seeing a ghost, I think, must be quite life-changing. Quite life-changing. I've never happened. I live in a beautiful house. It's only 1970, but 3 living things have passed away in this house. But I've never experienced anything. And I'm quite open. I'm not psychic or anything. I do a lot of dowsing for about 30 years. But I'm not a psychic or anything. Although psychics always say, oh, everyone's psychic. And I think they probably are. But it's how well people are tuned in to that world, some psychics say, "Oh, I'm open all the time. I see stuff," or "Oh, I need to close down." I don't know what they mean by close down, but everyone's different, aren't they? Everyone is different.
Yeah, definitely. I've been lucky enough to see more than one apparition.
Oh, wow!
And it has been witnessed by other people at the same time. So I'm not.
Now that's Karen. That's fascinating. When you get multiple witnesses, that is fascinating. Yeah.
I think the one that still baffles me more than anything else is RAF pilot in an old RAF, not the new lightweight one, but the thick, heavyweight, the wool version of their uniform.
Mm-hmm.
We saw it when I worked in the Yeovilton MOD. And it was a new building, fairly new building, and we were on a part of I think it was the 3rd floor up, and we watched him walk from one side of the office on a Saturday to the other side. And I was baffled, and this was while I was investigating, and my head was in the game, so I knew, that there were things out there that you couldn't explain. But inquiring on the Monday with other people, my work colleague and I heard that there was an RAF plane that crashed onto that exact bank.
Okay.
And the bank would have been higher before it was dug out. So was he getting out of the plane and walking where he crashed? No idea. We can't explain that.
No, because it's such a violent moment. Does that really enhance the recording of what you might see? Like a murder, I think, something like that.
But it wasn't like, Scooby-Doo would try and have you make you think that they would be. It wasn't see-through. It wasn't opaque kind of thing. It was solid. We thought that somebody was in the office that shouldn't have been, and we had the keys for the building. So nobody else could get in.
I mean, obviously, did you say you used to work for the police? Or
Yeah.
Yeah. So you must have a very logical mind. So it's interesting. To me, I find that much more interesting because you're trying to rationalize something with that logical mind, something you've seen, and multiple witnesses as well. That blows my mind when you hear that.
Yeah.
I'm always interested in hearing how many people saw a particular apparition or whatever at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, I have been lucky. I have seen a couple of ones, where nobody else has been there, but that's open to my gaslighting conversation that I've had. Mm-hmm. Did I really see that?
Yeah.
But moving on with questions again, it's not a question. Robert Stenton said, in relation to something else that you mentioned, the attraction is sympathetic attraction of energy. So obviously, if you're like-minded and have that thought process, I'm guessing is what he means on that one.
I think so. Yeah. I do like attracts like, law of vibration. I don't use the word law of attraction. I know it's very popular, but law of vibration. As I said, all these kind of things very new. Although it's been around for thousands of years, I've just noticed a real shift in the last 15 years, and more scientists coming on board who are quantum physicists and things like that, which makes it a little bit more legitimate. We never say that word, legitimate.
Yeah. Alex Shanklin says, I've met the most amazing people and had the most awe-inspiring conversations whilst investigating the paranormal in the last 20 years in some special locations, and he wouldn't have otherwise visited.
Amazing. Yeah, same here. Oh, I'm here now. You lovely people. I totally agree. I've met some great people. Friends for life. Yeah.
We're very grateful to have you as well. Thank you. Mark Wallace, did you want to...